The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council stretched as far as the eye could see. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their assigned seats, each species keeping to their own section. The air buzzed with different languages being translated in real time. At the center of it all sat Ambassador Sarah Chen, her hands folded calmly on the table before her. Sarah had been doing this job for 15 years. She was good at it. The other species respected her ability to find solutions when everyone else wanted to fight. Today's problem was bigger than most. The Zaphirian Empire and the Crystalline Confederacy were ready to go to war over mining rights in the Kepler Nebula. 17 different species had claims to that region of space. Each one thought they deserved the most valuable mining spots. The Zaphirians were a proud warrior race. Their leader, General Corax, stood nearly 8 feet tall with thick armor-like skin. He slammed his fist on the table as he spoke. The nebula belongs to those strong enough to take it. We have the largest fleet. We have the best warriors. The mining rights should be ours. Across from him sat the representative of the Crystalline Confederacy. The being looked like living glass, light flowing through its transparent body. Its voice sounded like wind chimes when it spoke. Strength is not everything, General. We discovered the nebula first. Our science teams mapped every asteroid. By galactic law, first discovery grants primary mining rights. The argument went in circles for hours. Sarah listened patiently, taking notes on a small tablet. She had heard similar arguments many times before. The key was finding something both sides wanted more than they wanted to fight. What if we divide the nebula into zones? Sarah suggested during a break in the shouting. The Zaphirians get the outer rim where the larger asteroids are. Their mining ships work better on big targets. The Confederacy gets the inner region where precision equipment is needed. Their technology is perfect for that kind of work. General Corax grunted. And what about the other 15 species? Do they get nothing? Sarah smiled. This was the part she enjoyed most. Each species gets assigned to work with either the Empire or the Confederacy, based on their skills. Everyone gets a fair share of the profits. Everyone wins. The glass being flickered with different colors, which Sarah knew meant it was thinking. This could work. But what guarantees do we have that the Empire will honor the agreement? Before General Corax could get angry, Sarah pulled out a thick document. I've spent the last 6 months working on this contract. It covers every possible dispute. There are penalty clauses, arbitration procedures, and profit-sharing formulas. If anyone breaks the agreement, they pay compensation to everyone else. The negotiations continued for 3 more days. Sarah worked 18-hour shifts, meeting with different groups, answering questions and adjusting details. Slowly, an agreement took shape. The Veltar representatives seemed impressed by her patience. The ancient Ethereals, who looked like floating energy beings, nodded approvingly at her detailed planning. On the 4th day, everything fell apart. The hegemony of Scar had been quiet during most of the talks. They were a species that looked somewhat like Earth sharks but walked upright. Their leader, Admiral Keth, had said very little. Sarah should have been more suspicious of their silence. Admiral Keth stood up during what should have been the final signing ceremony. Before we agree to this peace treaty, everyone should know the truth. He activated a holographic display that filled the center of the room. The display showed shipping records, bank transfers, and weapon sales. The evidence was clear and damaging. The Scar had been secretly selling weapons to both the Zaphirians and the Confederacy for months. They had been encouraging the conflict while publicly supporting peace talks. We have made significant profits from this dispute, Admiral Keth said with what might have been a smile. His shark-like teeth gleamed under the chamber lights. But there is more. The next set of records showed weapon sales to pirate groups. These same pirates had been attacking human colony ships for the past year. 43 ships had been destroyed. Over 2,000 colonists had died. The human colonies were simply acceptable losses for profitable business, Admiral Keth said. Their cargo was valuable and their ships were easy targets. The chamber erupted in chaos. General Corax roared with anger at being manipulated. The Confederacy representatives' light patterns turned angry red. Other species began shouting accusations at each other. Months of careful diplomacy crumbled in minutes. Sarah sat quietly in the middle of the storm. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands gripped the edge of the table until her knuckles turned white. She had spent half a year building this agreement. She had worked day and night to prevent a war. And now she learned that one of the species she had been trying to help had been murdering her people for profit. The shouting continued for an hour. Alliance declarations were made. Military threats were issued. The fragile peace of the galaxy began to crack apart. Finally, Sarah stood up. The chamber slowly grew quiet. Everyone knew the humans would try to fix this. They always did. Sarah was famous throughout the galaxy for her ability to find solutions. Surely she had another clever plan. Sarah picked up her tablet and papers. She placed them carefully in her briefcase. When she looked up, her voice was calm and steady. Humanity formally withdraws from all mediation efforts. We are going home. The silence that followed was complete. In 3,000 years of Galactic Council history, no species had ever abandoned negotiations. The Veltar representative was the first to speak. Ambassador Chen, surely you do not mean this. Your people are the best mediators in the galaxy. Without human involvement, this situation will lead to war. Sarah closed her briefcase with a soft click. We have spent 2 centuries trying to teach you how to solve problems without fighting. We have mediated thousands of disputes. We have prevented dozens of wars. We thought we were building something better. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every representative. We were wrong. Admiral Keth has shown us what you really think of our efforts. You see our colonies as acceptable targets. You see our people as acceptable losses. You view our attempts at peace as weakness to be exploited. General Korak stepped forward. Despite his warrior nature, he looked worried. The Scar do not speak for all of us. Most species here respect humanity's efforts. Sarah nodded slowly. Perhaps, but you also did nothing to stop them. For months, you knew pirates were attacking our people. No one offered help. No one shared intelligence. No one seemed to care as long as it did not affect your own worlds. She walked toward the chamber exit. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the vast space. We tried to do this the civilized way, she said without turning around. We believed that reason and cooperation were better than force and fear. We spent 200 years proving that peaceful solutions were possible. Sarah stopped at the chamber doors. When she turned back, her expression was colder than anyone had ever seen from a human diplomat. You have taught us that we were naive. Thank you for that lesson. We will not make the same mistake again. The doors closed behind her with a final sound that echoed through the silent chamber. The representative sat in stunned silence, unsure of what had just happened. Admiral Keth laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. Let the humans run home. More profit and power for the rest of us. But as reports began coming in from across the galaxy, his laughter died away. Human diplomats were packing up and leaving their posts on dozens of worlds. Trade negotiations were being canceled. Cultural exchange programs were ending. The galaxy's peacekeepers were going home, and for the first time in centuries, no one knew what would happen next. 3 weeks after Ambassador Chen walked out of the Galactic Council, confusion spread across the galaxy like a virus. At first, most species thought the humans were just having a bad day. They would calm down and come back to the negotiating table. They always did, but the humans did not come back. On Nexus Prime, the biggest trading hub in the galaxy, the Terran Embassy building went dark. A simple message appeared on its main screen. Humanity is temporarily unavailable for diplomatic engagement. The embassy staff had packed their belongings and left in the middle of the night. Similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. Human diplomats quietly closed their offices and disappeared. Active negotiations stopped suddenly. Trade deals that had been months in the making were abandoned. The humans left behind only empty rooms and unanswered questions. The Veltar government tried to contact Earth directly. Their messages went unanswered. The Ethereal Collective, with their advanced communication technology, attempted to reach human colonies on the outer rim. They found only silence. Prime Crystal Zathara of the Crystalline Confederacy called an emergency meeting of her advisors. The crystal being's body flickered with worried blue light as she reviewed the latest reports. How many treaties were the humans involved in? She asked her aide. The aide, a smaller crystal creature, consulted its records. In the past century, humans mediated 40% of all successful galactic agreements. They were involved in trade disputes, territorial negotiations, resource-sharing contracts, and cultural exchange programs. The Prime Crystal's light dimmed. And how many conflicts were they quietly preventing? Another aide stepped forward. Our intelligence suggests they were handling at least 60 minor disputes at any given time. Border disagreements, trade route conflicts, colony expansion issues. Most species never knew how many problems the humans were solving behind the scenes. The full scope of the crisis was becoming clear. The humans had not just been mediators. They had been the invisible foundation that kept galactic civilization stable. Without them, old grudges and new conflicts were beginning to surface. On the world of Veltar Prime, General Thos reviewed intelligence reports with growing concern. The Veltar were a military species, but they respected the humans' diplomatic skills. Now those skills were gone. What is happening in human space? General Thos asked his intelligence chief. Complete communications blackout, sir. Our agents report that human merchant ships are returning to their home systems. All human colonies have stopped accepting visitors. Most concerning, the Human Volunteer Corps has recalled all of their disaster relief teams. General Thos understood the significance. The Human Volunteer Corps was famous across the galaxy for their emergency response work. When natural disasters struck, when colonies faced starvation, when species needed help, the humans always answered. They had saved millions of lives over the decades. Have they given any reason for this withdrawal? The general asked. None, sir. They are simply gone. Reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy. Human ships were moving in unusual patterns, gathering in groups and heading toward human space. Their colonies were stockpiling food, medical supplies, and raw materials. Most worrying, they had begun refusing passage to non-human travelers. The captain of a Zaphirian cargo ship reported a strange encounter near the human colony of New Geneva. His ship had been carrying refugees from a recent disaster, hoping to reach a human medical facility, known for treating injured civilians. The humans refused to let us dock, Captain Vex reported to his superiors. They said their facilities were no longer available to non-human patients. When I asked why, they just said new security protocols and told us to leave the system. Similar reports came from across human territory. Colonies that had welcomed alien visitors for centuries were now turning them away. Research stations that had hosted scientists from dozens of species were going silent. The humans were pulling back from galactic society completely. Admiral Keth of the Scar Hegemony reviewed these reports with satisfaction. His plan was working perfectly. With the humans gone, there would be more opportunities for profit. More conflicts meant more weapon sales, more chaos meant more chances to expand Scar territory. Let them sulk in their little corner of space, he told his advisors. The galaxy belongs to those strong enough to take what they want. But even Admiral Keth felt uneasy when he read the latest intelligence briefings. Human ship movements were not random. They seemed to follow some kind of pattern that his analysts could not understand. Human colonies were not just stockpiling supplies. They were building something. Construction projects were visible from orbit, but the purpose was unclear. Most disturbing were the reports from Scar intelligence agents who tried to enter human space. 3 spy ships had been sent to gather information. None had returned. The Kepler nebula crisis, which had started the whole mess, exploded into open conflict. Without human mediators, the Zaphirian Empire and Crystalline Confederacy could not reach any agreement. Both sides began moving military fleets toward the disputed region. Other old conflicts flared up across the galaxy. The Ethereals accused the Veltar of violating ancient boundary agreements. Smaller species formed desperate alliances or found themselves facing conquest by stronger neighbors. The careful balance that had maintained peace for decades was crumbling. In the midst of this chaos, a single transmission burst across all galactic communication channels. Every ship, every station, every planet received the same message. Ambassador Sarah Chen appeared on screens across the galaxy. She looked different from her last appearance at the Council. Her diplomatic uniform had been replaced with simple civilian clothes. Her expression was calm but cold. Behind her, the familiar skyline of Earth could be seen through a window. To all galactic civilizations, she began, her voice clear and steady. Humanity hereby formally withdraws from the Galactic Council and all associated treaties. We will honor existing trade agreements until their natural expiration, but we will not renew them. She paused, looking directly into the camera as if she could see every alien watching across the galaxy. We strongly advise all non-human vessels to avoid Terran space. We have implemented new security measures. We will not be responsible for what happens to those who ignore this warning. The transmission continued for another minute, providing technical details about the withdrawal process. But most viewers focused on one phrase that Sarah repeated twice. This is not a negotiation. When the transmission ended, the galaxy fell into a deeper silence than before. The humans had not just left the table. They had burned the bridge behind them. On dozens of worlds, government officials called emergency meetings. Military leaders reviewed defense plans. Trade organizations calculated the economic impact of losing human markets and mediation services. The Ethereal Council, the oldest governing body in the galaxy, convened for the first time in 50 years. Ancient beings who had guided galactic civilization for millennia struggled to understand what had happened. In 3,000 years of recorded history, spoke the eldest Ethereal, its energy form flickering with age, no species has ever completely withdrawn from galactic society. The humans are entering uncharted territory. A younger Ethereal, barely 2,000 years old, expressed the question everyone was thinking. What do we do now? The answer came sooner than expected. Reports began filtering in from the Outer Rim territories. Human fleets had been spotted near asteroid mining operations. Their ships looked different, larger, more angular, with weapon systems that did not match any known human technology. The humans were not hiding in their space. They were preparing for something, and across the galaxy, species that had taken human peacekeeping for granted began to realize they might have made a terrible mistake. The war everyone had feared finally began 6 weeks after the humans disappeared. The Zaphirian Empire and Crystalline Confederacy clashed in the Kepler nebula with devastating results. Without human mediators to find middle ground, both sides committed their full military might to the battle. General Corax led the Zaphirian fleet himself. 300 warships armed with plasma cannons and nuclear missiles faced off against the Confederacy's crystal ships that could bend light into deadly beams. The battle raged for 18 hours before both sides retreated with heavy losses. But something was wrong. The Zaphirians discovered their supply lines were falling apart. For decades, human logistics experts had quietly helped organize their military supply chains. Without that expertise, ammunition ran short and spare parts were delayed. Ships broke down without proper maintenance schedules. The Confederacy faced similar problems. Their intelligence networks, which had relied heavily on human information brokers, went blind. They found themselves fighting an enemy they could not track or predict. The conflict spread like fire across the galaxy. Old grudges that had been buried for generations came back to life. The Veltar began attacking ethereal trade routes, claiming ancient territorial rights. Smaller species either formed desperate alliances or found themselves conquered by stronger neighbors. Admiral Keith watched the chaos with satisfaction from his command ship. The Scar hegemony was profiting enormously from the conflicts. Both sides in every war needed weapons, and the Scar were happy to sell to anyone with enough credits. "This is better than I hoped," Admiral Keth told his staff. "Without the humans interfering with their peace talks, everyone is fighting. Our weapon sales have increased by 300%. But Admiral Keth's satisfaction turned to annoyance when reports reached him about human activities. Human merchant ships had completely stopped carrying non-human passengers or cargo. Human colonies were refusing to trade with other species. Worst of all, several Scar intelligence operations had gone silent after entering human space. If the humans want to isolate themselves, fine, Admiral Keth decided, but they will not ignore the galaxy forever. I will give them a reason to come back to the negotiating table. He ordered a task force to blockade New Geneva, a peaceful human agricultural colony on the edge of human space. The plan was simple: surround the colony, cut off their supplies, and force the humans to talk. New Geneva had a population of 5 million farmers and their families. Surely the humans would negotiate rather than let innocent people suffer. Captain Brex commanded the Scar blockade fleet. He was a veteran officer who had fought in a dozen wars. As his ships approached New Geneva, he felt confident about the mission. Human colonies were known for their light defenses. They had always relied on Galactic Council protection instead of building strong military forces. The fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers and 40 destroyer-class ships. More than enough firepower to intimidate a farming colony. As they entered the New Geneva system, Captain Brex opened a communication channel. "Attention, New Geneva colony. This is Captain Brex of the Scar hegemony. You are now under blockade. Surrender your system and we will discuss terms with your government." The response came from New Geneva's orbital control station. The voice was calm and professional, with the slight accent common to Outer Rim colonists. "Negative, Captain Brex. New Geneva colony does not recognize Scar authority. We advise you to leave the system immediately. Captain Brex laughed. The humans still thought they could solve everything with words. Colony control, you have no choice. We have 52 warships. You have a farming planet. Surrender now and no one needs to get hurt. The human voice remained steady. Captain Brex, this is your final warning. Leave the system now or we will consider your fleet hostile. We will defend ourselves. Defend yourselves with what? Captain Brex asked, scanning his sensor displays. I see no military ships. No orbital weapons platforms, just farms and greenhouses. As he spoke, his sensors began picking up new contacts. What he had thought were communication satellites around New Geneva suddenly showed massive energy readings. The planet's 3 moons, which had appeared to be normal rocky bodies, were moving into new positions. Captain, his weapons officer called out, I'm reading some very strange energy signatures. Those satellites are not what they appear to be. Captain Brex studied his displays more carefully. The objects his ships had identified as civilian infrastructure were revealing their true nature. Massive weapons platforms unfolded from camouflage positions. The moons themselves split open to reveal mechanical structures larger than anything in SCAR databases. What in the void is that? Captain Brex whispered. New Geneva's response was no longer coming from the orbital control station. The voice now came from everywhere at once, transmitted by sources throughout the system. Captain Brex, you have been warned. Defend yourselves. The Battle of New Geneva lasted exactly 17 minutes and 34 seconds. Captain Brex never understood what happened to his fleet. The SCAR ships opened fire first, launching missiles and plasma bursts at the nearest human platforms. The weapons simply vanished before reaching their targets, absorbed by defensive systems that seemed to bend space itself. The human response was unlike anything in galactic military history. Beams of energy that looked like twisted starlight cut through SCAR shields as if they were made of paper. Entire destroyer squadrons found themselves trapped in bubbles where time moved differently, their crews aging years and seconds while their ships crumbled. Captain Brex watched in horror as his flagship sister ship simply ceased to exist. One moment the heavy cruiser was there, its crew of 800 SCAR warriors firing desperately at human targets. The next moment there was only empty space where the ship had been. All ships retreat. Captain Brex screamed into his communicator. Fall back! Emergency jump. But retreat was impossible. The human weapons created some kind of interference that prevented faster-than-light travel. The SCAR ships were trapped in the system with an enemy they could not comprehend. One by one, the mighty SCAR fleet was systematically destroyed. The human weapons seemed to be controlled by an intelligence that could predict every SCAR movement. Ships that tried to hide behind asteroids found that the asteroids themselves were weapons platforms. Vessels that attempted to surrender were ignored and eliminated with clinical precision. Captain Brex found himself alone in a crippled command ship, his entire fleet reduced to debris. Emergency life support was failing. His crew was dead or dying. He prepared to meet the same fate as his warriors. Instead, a human voice spoke directly to his ship. Captain Brex, you have one escape pod remaining functional. You will use it now. You will return to your people. You will tell them what you have seen here. Why? Captain Brex asked, his voice barely a whisper. Why spare me? The human voice was quiet for a moment before answering. Because someone needs to tell the galaxy what happens when they mistake our patience for weakness. The escape pod launched automatically, carrying Captain Brex away from the battle site. As he traveled through space toward the nearest SCAR outpost, he tried to make sense of what he had witnessed. The humans had not fought like any species he knew. Their weapons, their tactics, their technology, everything was beyond current galactic understanding. When Captain Brex's escape pod was finally rescued, he could only repeat the same phrases over and over. They were never the weak ones. They were holding back. They were always holding back. News of the massacre spread across the galaxy within hours. 52 SCAR warships destroyed without inflicting a single casualty on the humans. Weapon technology that could manipulate time and space. Defensive systems that made attacks simply disappear. The Galactic Intelligence Services frantically reviewed everything they knew about human military capabilities. What they found terrified them. For 2 centuries, humans had been sharing only the most basic technology with other species. Their true capabilities had been hidden behind peaceful diplomacy and helpful cooperation. Admiral Keth received the news in his private office. The report from Captain Brex lay on his desk like a death sentence. 52 ships lost, hundreds of trained warriors dead, and all because he had underestimated the humans. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Keth felt afraid. The species he had dismissed as weak peacekeepers had just demonstrated power beyond anything in the known galaxy, and he had made them angry. Across the galaxy, other species leaders read similar reports with growing dread. The humans were no longer hiding their true nature. The question now was simple: what would they do next? The news of New Geneva spread across the galaxy like a disease. In government buildings on dozens of worlds, emergency sessions were called. Military leaders reviewed defense plans that suddenly seemed worthless. Intelligence agencies frantically searched through centuries of data, looking for clues they had missed about human capabilities. The Ethereal Council, ancient beings who had guided galactic civilization for thousands of years, accessed their deepest archives. What they found made their energy forms flicker with fear. The records were old, dating back to humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. The Ethereal expedition that had discovered Earth had filed classified reports that few beings had ever read. These reports painted a terrifying picture of human society. They have been fighting constant wars for their entire recorded history, the ancient report stated. Their creativity and destruction surpasses anything we have encountered. They have weapons that can destroy their entire world multiple times over. Most concerning, they seem to enjoy the challenge of conflict. The Ethereal, who had led the first contact mission, had recommended extreme caution. These beings must be brought into the Galactic Council immediately, the report continued. If we cannot make them our allies, they will certainly become our greatest threat. Their diplomatic skills are as advanced as their military capabilities. They are natural leaders who could unite or destroy the galaxy. Now 2 centuries later, the Ethereals understood why humanity had been accepted into the Galactic Council so quickly. It had not been generosity or respect. It had been fear, but the galaxy's terror was just beginning. Human fleets began emerging from their territory with technology that made the New Geneva battle look like a small demonstration. Their ships were larger and more advanced than anything in galactic databases. They moved in perfect formation with precision that suggested computer-controlled coordination. The humans did not conquer planets in the traditional sense. Instead, they simply took what they wanted and dared anyone to stop them. A valuable mining system would suddenly find human ships claiming orbital positions. Trade routes that had been used for centuries were redirected through human-controlled space. Strategic systems were occupied overnight by human forces that appeared without warning. Any species that challenged them faced the same fate as the Scar fleet at New Geneva. The Veltar sent a battle group to reclaim a contested mining world. 27 ships were destroyed in minutes by weapons that created miniature black holes. The survivors reported that the human ships never took damage and their crews never seemed to tire. The Zaphirian Empire, still licking its wounds from the Kepler Nebula War, tried to negotiate with the humans. General Corax personally traveled to the edge of human space under a flag of truce. His message was broadcast to human colonies asking for a meeting. The human response was broadcast back on every frequency in the galaxy. Ambassador Chen appeared on the screen, but she looked nothing like the patient diplomat who had once mediated galactic disputes. She wore a military uniform with insignia that no one recognized. Behind her stood figures in similar uniforms, their faces hidden behind advanced tactical helmets. "General Corax," she said, her voice carrying none of its former warmth. "Humanity appreciates your desire to negotiate. However, we are no longer interested in your terms. You will withdraw your forces from the Kepler system within 72 hours. The entire nebula now belongs to humanity." General Corax tried to argue. "Ambassador, surely we can reach some agreement. The Zaphirian Empire has ancient claims to that region." Sarah's expression did not change. "Your ancient claims are no longer recognized by human authority. You have 72 hours. The transmission ended. When the deadline passed, Zaphirian forces found their ships simply shut down by some kind of electromagnetic pulse. Human boarding parties took control of every vessel without firing a shot. The Zaphirian crews were transported to the edge of the system and released in lifeboats. Their ships were absorbed into the growing human fleet. Panic spread through galactic governments. The species that had once dismissed humans as naive peacekeepers now faced an enemy they could not understand or defeat. Desperate, they began forming an unprecedented alliance: the Zaphirian Empire, Crystalline Confederacy, Veltar Hegemony, Ethereal Collective, and 43 smaller species agreed to pool their resources. Ancient enemies put aside their differences to face what they now recognized as an existential threat. Admiral Zaphek of the Confederacy was elected as Supreme Commander of the Allied forces. The crystal being's light pattern showed deep concern as it reviewed intelligence reports about human capabilities. "We are facing an opponent that has been hiding their true strength for 2 centuries. Admiral Zaphek told the Alliance leadership. "Every interaction we have had with them has been carefully managed to make us underestimate their power." The Alliance began gathering the largest military force in galactic history. 15,000 warships from nearly 50 species converged at a staging area near the galactic core. Advanced weapons from every civilization were combined and improved. New technologies were shared between species that had been enemies days before. The force represented the combined military might of galactic civilization. Never before had so many species united for a single purpose. The fleet included everything from Zaphirian dreadnoughts to ethereal energy ships to Veltar assault cruisers. But as the fleet prepared for what everyone knew would be the final battle, disturbing reports continued to arrive. Human expansion was accelerating. Entire sectors of space were being claimed daily. Most concerning, human ships had been spotted near the galactic core itself, studying the ancient structures left behind by long-extinct civilizations. Intelligence suggested the humans were reverse engineering technologies that were millions of years old. Archaeological sites that had been studied for centuries were yielding secrets to human scientists in a matter of weeks. The implications were terrifying. "They are not just using advanced technology," reported the Alliance Chief Science Officer, an ethereal researcher thousands of years old. "They are improving it. Their rate of technological advancement is accelerating beyond our ability to predict." Admiral Zaphek made the decision that would doom the Alliance. "We cannot wait for them to become even stronger. We must strike now while we still have some chance of victory." The target was obvious: Earth itself. Humanity's homeworld was the center of their civilization. If the Alliance could capture or destroy Earth, the human expansion would collapse. At least that was the theory. The 15,000 ships of the Galactic Alliance began their final journey. As they traveled through space toward the Sol system, Admiral Zaphek addressed the crews in a broadcast that reached every ship. "We face an enemy that has deceived us for 2 centuries. They pretended to be peaceful while preparing for war. They offered help while studying our weaknesses. They smiled at our negotiations while planning our destruction." The Admiral's crystal form flickered with determined light. "But we are not defenseless. We represent 47 civilizations. We carry the weapons and wisdom of 1,000 worlds. We fight not for conquest but for survival." The journey to Earth took 12 days. During the trip, more reports arrived about human activities. They were not just expanding their territory, they were transforming it. Entire star systems were being modified for purposes no one could understand. Planets were being moved into new orbits. Stars themselves were being altered to produce different types of energy. "What are they building?" asked one of the Alliance commanders. No one had an answer. The humans were working on a scale that defied comprehension. They were not just conquering the galaxy. They were rebuilding it according to their own design. As the Alliance fleet approached the Sol system, Admiral Zaphek felt a mixture of determination and dread. This would be the largest space battle in galactic history, 15,000 ships against whatever defenses the humans had prepared around their home world. The Alliance expected to find massive fleets waiting for them. They expected orbital fortresses and weapon platforms. They expected the humans to throw everything they had at the invading force. What they found was something no one had imagined possible. The Sol system was not just defended, it was transformed. And waiting for them was a message that would change the galaxy forever. The Alliance fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 15,000 warships representing the combined might of 47 civilizations. Admiral Zaphek expected to see massive human fleets waiting for them. Instead, they found a single small ship floating in empty space. It was a diplomatic courier vessel, no larger than a shuttle. The same type of ship that Ambassador Chen had once used to travel between negotiations. The fleet's sensors could not detect any weapons or shields. It seemed impossible that such a tiny craft would face the largest armada in galactic history. Admiral Zefek opened a communication channel, expecting to receive humanity's surrender. Instead, Ambassador Chen's voice came through clearly, carrying the same calm tone she had used in countless negotiations. To the Galactic Alliance fleet, you have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and surrender, or you will be destroyed. This is your only warning. The bridge of Admiral Zefek's flagship erupted in shocked laughter. 47 species, 15,000 ships, millions of trained warriors facing one small diplomatic vessel. The crystal being's light pattern showed amused disbelief. Ambassador Chen, Admiral Zefek replied, "Surely you cannot be serious. We outnumber you 15,000 to 1. Surrender now and we will discuss terms." Sarah's response came immediately. "Admiral, you have been warned. Your 30 seconds are now 20. Admiral Zefek looked around the command bridge at his staff officers. Representatives from dozens of species stared back, all showing the same mixture of confusion and confidence. This had to be some kind of human psychological warfare. 15 seconds, Admiral. Sarah's voice continued. Admiral Zefek made his decision. All ships prepare to attack. Target that courier ship, and he never finished the sentence. The Sol system began to reveal its true nature. What the Alliance had thought were planets started to move with impossible precision. Mars broke apart to reveal a massive space station that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Jupiter's moons unfolded like flowers, each one transforming into a weapons platform larger than most space cities. The asteroid belt was not a belt at all. Thousands of objects the Alliance had identified as rocks suddenly lit up with energy signatures that hurt to look at. Every piece of debris in the system was revealed to be a carefully camouflaged weapon. Earth's moon split down the middle with a sound that somehow carried through the vacuum of space. From inside emerged a fortress that made the largest galactic dreadnoughts look like toys. Its surface was covered with weapons that seemed to bend light around them. Admiral Zefek stared at the sensor displays in growing horror. The entire Sol system was an artificial construction. Every planet, every moon, every asteroid had been converted into part of a massive defensive network. The Alliance had not stumbled into a battle. They had walked into a trap that had been prepared for centuries. "How is this possible?" whispered one of the Ethereal commanders. "Our records show that Sol was a natural system. These modifications would take thousands of years to complete." Sarah's voice answered as if she had heard the question. "We have been preparing for this day since we first joined the Galactic Council. We hoped it would never come. You have forced our hand." The battle began without any formal declaration. The Sol system's defenses simply activated, and the Alliance fleet found itself facing weapons that operated beyond known physics. The human technology was not just advanced, it was impossible. Energy beams that could pass through shields as if they were not there. Gravitational weapons that created crushing forces from nothing. Devices that seemed to stop time itself around targeted ships. Admiral Zefek watched in terror as the pride of the Zaphirian Empire, a dreadnought that had never been damaged in a century of warfare, simply dissolved. Its molecular structure came apart atom by atom, leaving only empty space where 3,000 warriors had been moments before. The crystalline Confederacy's light-bending ships found their own technology turned against them. Human weapons somehow reversed their defensive systems, causing the crystal vessels to tear themselves apart with their own reflected energy beams. Veltar assault cruisers, known throughout the galaxy for their thick armor and powerful shields, discovered that human weapons could target them through dimensions they did not know existed. Ships would explode from the inside out, their crews never understanding what had hit them. The Alliance tried every tactic they knew. Ships scattered to make themselves harder targets. Squadrons coordinated attacks on single human platforms. Desperate commanders ordered ramming attacks when their weapons proved useless. Nothing worked. The human defenses responded to every strategy with perfect counters. It was as if they could predict every move the Alliance would make before it was made. Ships that tried to escape found their engines disabled by some kind of selective electromagnetic pulse. Vessels that attempted to hide were found by sensors that could apparently see through any concealment. The battle lasted 53 minutes. When it ended, 14,927 Alliance ships had been destroyed or disabled. Only 73 vessels remained functional, and those were crippled beyond repair. Admiral Zefek found himself alone on the bridge of his flagship, his crew dead or unconscious around him. Emergency life support was failing. His proud crystal form was cracked and darkened, like a mirror that had been shattered. Ambassador Chen's image appeared on the main screen. Behind her, Admiral Zefek could see the control room of what must have been the Moon Fortress. Dozens of humans in military uniforms worked at stations that looked like they belonged in a science fiction dream. "Admiral Zefek," Sarah said, her voice carrying none of the satisfaction he had expected. Instead, she sounded tired and sad. "You came here to restore the old order. That order is dead. We tried to preserve it, to work within it, to make it better. You chose to destroy it instead. How?" Admiral Zefek asked, his voice barely a whisper through his damaged form. "How long have you been preparing for this?" "Since the day we first made contact with galactic civilization," Sarah replied. "We knew this moment would come eventually. We hoped our diplomatic efforts could delay it indefinitely. We were wrong." She gestured to something off-screen, and a document appeared on Admiral Zefek's display. It contained terms of surrender that were surprisingly generous. "Every surviving member of your fleet will be returned to their home worlds," Sarah explained. "Your species will be allowed to maintain their governments and cultures. Trade will resume under human oversight. Territorial disputes will be resolved through human arbitration. War between galactic species is now illegal." Admiral Zefek studied the terms with growing confusion. "These conditions are merciful. Why? You could demand anything. You could enslave us all." Sarah's expression softened slightly. "Because we remember what it was like to hope for a better galaxy. We spent 2 centuries trying to teach your species that cooperation was better than conflict. We failed, but we have not forgotten the goal." She leaned forward, her eyes meeting the Admiral's through the screen. "We will govern the galaxy now, not because we want to, but because you have proven that you cannot govern yourselves. Peace will be maintained. Justice will be enforced. The weak will be protected from the strong." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Zefek alone with his thoughts. Around him, rescue ships approached the wreckage of the greatest fleet in galactic history. But these were not Alliance vessels. They were human ships come to collect survivors and provide medical aid. 5 years passed. The galaxy settled into what historians would later call the Great Peace. Human governors oversaw disputed regions with firm but fair authority. The old Galactic Council building was converted into a museum, its chambers preserved as a reminder of failed diplomacy. War between species became extinct. Territorial disputes were resolved through human arbitration that favored neither side but found solutions that worked. Trade flourished under human protection, with routes secured by patrol fleets that no pirate dared challenge. Ambassador Sarah Chen, now holding the title of Galactic Administrator, maintained an office in the old council chambers. Her final log entry, 5 years after the Battle of Sol, reflected on the transformation. "We spent 2 centuries trying to teach them diplomacy. They forced us to teach them fear instead. Now they understand. We preferred negotiation not because we were weak, but because we were strong enough to choose restraint." She paused in her writing, looking out the window at the peaceful streets of Nexus Prime. Representatives from dozens of species walked together without the old tensions and suspicious glances. Children from different worlds played games that mixed traditions from across the galaxy. "The irony is not lost on us," she continued. "We became everything we tried to help them avoid. Conquerors, rulers, the strong imposing their will on the weak. But perhaps this was always inevitable. Perhaps some species are meant to lead and others are meant to follow." The galaxy watched with respectful silence as human patrol ships moved between the stars. The terror that had gripped civilization during the brief war had transformed into grateful relief. The predators had accepted their role as shepherds, and peace reigned among the sheep.